Hello there and welcome. My name is Jimmy Wikman and I'm an Atlassian expert. I've been working with Atlassian platforms in 2012. And in today's video I want to talk a little bit about the changes that is now rolling out in March, where Atlassian will change now the wording that they have had now for Jira, Jira Service Management and Jira Product Discovery, where we have previously referred to things as issues or tickets. And that is now going to change into the word work. And this is something that has been going on for a while, and a lot of people have had opinions on it. And now that they have actually presented this one in the Atlassian community, a lot of people have become upset or even frustrated because they have basically one or two things have happened. One is that they are confused about the change itself, and the other one is that they do not really understand how the platform works, and in some cases it's both at the same time. And there's a lot of opinions that is reigning here, and people are resisting change. Basically, they don't want this change to happen, so they are making claims that things are differently than they actually are. And they are also trying to clinging on to saying that, can you show me the data that this is actually making sense? Which is weird, because this has nothing to do with feedback that Atlassian have received. This is a business decision. But I was thinking I would like to do a short video just going through the changes that they are now describing, and also go through a few of the comments. And I will try to be nice. I've done this twice already. I've deleted the other two because I get a little bit annoyed with people that have opinions that doesn't make any sense, and that they're making claims that are untrue. But I understand where they're coming from, and I understand that they are frustrated. This is a change that they have to deal with, and they don't want to do that. So let me jump over to the Atlassian community and go over the changes that are coming, what they mean, and also try to be nice about a few of the comments. Okay, so here we are now in the Atlassian community, and this is the article that poor Josh here now was the guy who actually published, and he is getting a lot of heat from it. And this one was then published on January 22nd. When I'm recording this one is February 7th, so it's almost 3 weeks later. No, it's only 2 weeks later. So it's 2 weeks later, and a lot of comments have happened here. So first let's go through what are they actually saying, what are they doing. So they are excited to announce. I don't think they really are. I think they are apprehensive about announcing this one because they know the opinions they will receive. But they are introducing now work as the collective term for all items tracked in Jira. And I think this could be what is confusing people, because it's not the items. It is the language that they are changing, the taxonomy within Jira. So the way that they are doing this one now then is that they are replacing every time you have issue or ticket within Jira, and then they will change that one to work. And this one goes a little bit deeper than just having it in the language files. But they are explaining here, why are we doing this one? And the biggest issue with having issues as the descriptor term for all things that you do in Jira is that it's not issues that we are working with, right? It's not problems we are working with. It's not I have an issue situation. It is I would like to have something done, or this is the work that I want you to do. So the problem with issues was that Jira was, at the beginning, was created as a bug tracker. So all the words that they actually put in there were for that purpose. And when they purchased Greenhopper and they introduced that one and made it more as an agile task management tool, that one got left behind. So they actually kept that one. And that is one of the problems that they have had now for many, many years. is that people are reacting to, why should I create something you refer to as an issue? This is not an issue, this is work I want you to do. So removing the term issue is something that people like me have asked for decades back, basically, saying that we can't have this term because new users react to it poorly because they are not working with issues, they are working with tasks, and they're working with user stories, they are working with requests and other things, but they are not having issues. So what are they actually changing then here? So what they want to do is to make Jira smarter. That's what they are saying. So the interface will dynamically adjust to fit that context. So what they are showing here, and this one is also a little bit confusing here, because what you're seeing here are issue types. And they will not change in any way or form. They will be the same. This has always been possible. Every project can have their own issue types. That's always been the case. So I don't really know what they are meaning by this one. But this part here is what actually will change. That is the reference to these objects as a group. And they will now be referred to as work types or work items, or whatever you have in Jira here that refers to, in today's solution, you have it as issues, as issue types, or you have it as ticket types. And they want to make sure that we want to make sure Jira speak your language. And yes, that is true, because in the past it has not spoken our language. We have used a word that does not represent what we are actually doing. We are not working with issues. We are not really dealing with issues even. A very small part of what we do are issues. What we have been doing is we have created descriptions of work. That is what we are doing. That's what a task management tool actually do. And this is all work. We're going to talk about a little bit of the misperception people have for this one later on. And you can also see then that updated, for example, items, when you have actually updated an issue today, it will say 3 issues have been updated, and now it will instead say 3 work items have been updated. And the same thing, 10 work items displayed instead of 10 issues displayed. And they are also showing here which of the language files will actually be affected by this. So you will actually see then that not all of them will be affected by this, because some of the language files actually using similar terminology already. And we are also seeing then how will this one happen. So in March, when this one rolls out, you will basically don't have to do anything. It will just change based on the language file and the hard-coded text that you have here and there in Jira, and it will actually just be updated for you. But it is interesting that they say that this update will roll out gradually with work replacing issue across all Jira Cloud products. But it only says that this one will replace for issue and not for tickets. And that is something I think could be relevant when we are talking about this one. And the only thing that you can do is basically inform your teams that this will change. And for most people, this will have no effect whatsoever when they are doing their work, other than a few buttons here and there when they're clicking to create a ticket or create an issue. They will have no impact on their work whatsoever. So a few things that are interesting then in the frequently asked questions is, why didn't we use terms like item, record, activity? Well, for one, record is something that you use for a database record, and Jira is not a database. And the information is stored in the database, yes, but these are work items that you're doing, that you are progressing through a workflow, then you close it as done, and it should probably be deleted, also part of your data retention plan, to make sure that you do not get a bloated system. So this is not a record we are referring to, because there are basically everything in Jira is a record of some form. So it doesn't make any sense to have that one. Activity, well, you could theoretically have that one, but the activity is when you actually do the work. And the tickets themselves, or the issues themselves, they are not active, so they are not activated in many cases. That's why you have the passive states, for example. And it would be weird to saying that I'm doing an activity, but I'm not doing anything. So that is also a weird thing to call them. And item, I think we will still refer to many of these things as items, even though it doesn't make any sense, because an item doesn't mean anything. An item of what? It is a generic term that doesn't really mean anything. And this one, why not use the term like ticket? And I think when it comes to Jira Service Management, I think the term ticket will stay. And the reason for that one is that ticket is a part of many a part of a lot of methodologies and processes. Like you have an actual work type that is called ticket management. So I don't think this one will go away. I think what they try to do is to merge all of them into one word. And I have a feeling that this one will never be rolled out, or it will be rolled out and they will roll it back eventually, because tickets is something that we probably need to have still. Can you choose to replace the term issues? No. And if you understand how Jira works, you probably understand why, because this one is something that is part of the language files. So the references that you have for where you print out the issue is actually determined by the language file. So if you want to have this dynamically, or you want to set a specific value, you need to store that value somewhere, which means that they need to extend the architecture to actually have this one as a variable that they can place and replace then the value in the database. And there will be a lot of technical aspects to that one, to actually merge these things in back and forth. So if you change it, you need to update the database, and then your database need to update all of the records that you have in the other table, because you cannot fetch those dynamically probably. Or you will have something that will be need to fetch on load from another part of the database, and there are a lot of technical aspects to this. You also have the problem that if you are working in an organization that have more than one Jira, and that is not uncommon, then you actually will have different wording for different instances, or it could happen. And it could also be that since Jira is one platform and maybe you have another platform like Align, if they want to do a similar thing there, then if you have a mismatch there because you need to have a configuration based on the platform, again you will have confusion, and that's not what we want. Will it happen in data center? Well, not yet, and I think this depends a little bit on how they want to proceed with data center as a whole. If they want to continue to evolve this one, data center I mean, then they need to align it, because they cannot have double documentation with different naming. That would be very strange. But if they want to pull back and like hand over the responsibility for data center, like making it a community edition, or having this one something that only app vendors, for example, or sorry, not app vendors, vendors in general, or partners can actually sell and support, then they will have a different approach to that one. I think that this one will roll out probably at Q3, Q4 this year, when the initial anger of having this one rolling out in cloud have settled a little bit, because they don't want to have both groups being angry at the same time. So I think this one will probably align at the end of the year at the latest. Now it's not a lot of time left, but you only have like a month probably, or a month and a half before this one is actually in your instance. But if you want to check it out, what it looks like right now, you can have the Chrome extension here. So you can actually, just like we did for the navigation, so you can turn it on and you can check to see what happens, and then you can turn it off to see what the changes are. And then you have two questions then. How does this affect API and JQL? So they will have fallbacks for this one. So basically what you have in JQL today or in the API will still work after the change rolls out. And then they will add a new prefix then, or new data objects that you can use. That will be for the future. So that means that, I don't know, 6 months to a year from now, they will probably take away what you have today. So you will have time to move over to the new syntax. So that was the changes that they have, and they will have this one then on March 25th, pretty soon. And why are they actually doing that? They haven't specifically said why they are doing it. They have given some reasons here. Then we want to do it. There was a problem with naming them issues, and we want to have like a more unified language. And I think the reason they want to do this is because my feeling is that they are moving towards a no-code platform that can be configured basically for any type of work. So they are moving away from discipline-specific tools. So Jira is no longer Jira software, for example, and we will probably see that they will merge in different functionalities, so you can use this one, like if you want to move from Asana or any other tool like that, use this one for marketing campaigns or design work and things like that. It should be easier to do that in a more generic tool that you can actually configure for different purposes. And if you have that one, you cannot have different names for the work types that you are actually having in there. So they have probably used this renaming as part of that strategy to actually align it against this will be work tools and you do work here. Instead of having it specific for a bug tracker, for example, where you describe these are the issues that we are having. And this is a business decision, obviously. Sure, they have listened to our feedback, and I think what they have done is that they have observed the same objections I have when we look at the comments here then, is that these are not valid concerns. These are from concerns that people have that resist change. And Jira is a SaaS product, so change is happening every week. If you're working within the Atlassian platform, you probably know that you get releases basically every week, or multiple releases even every week. And you have no options for those either. So these changes will just be a way for Atlassian to position their product, and also to making sure that their product now can have a unified language. So I think this is good, and you will also see that the benefits, when we talk a little bit about what people are commenting here, is actually bigger than you think. It's not just a renaming of things. It is actually a way to actually force people away from the abuse that some of them have been using Jira for, where they are trying to use Jira for not work items, or even to force people a little bit to think about work differently. Because I've seen several comments when they say that this is not work, and it's like, but you don't understand what work is then, because of course someone is working on that. So for me, I think this is one of the best changes I've seen ever since they gave us the option to change epics, because this one will help align languages and actually talk about what we do that is actually representing what we actually do. So we are not using issues as a descriptor of work, for example, which is weird as hell. So this is great from my perspective. But not everyone thinks like me. And we have a ton of comments here. I'm not going to go through all of them. There are a few of them that I want to go through. And I'm going to start with the top one here for David. He has a good description of one of the confusions I think I'm seeing here. So this one. This one is quite telling for me. I'm sorry if you're not the only one, David, if you're watching this one, and a lot of people have the same thing here. So they're saying then that many use Jira issues to represent things that are not work. Entities, objects, assets, clients, contacts, vendors, employees. I'm not sure how you're using these, but if you are using these as data objects and to actually store data, then you are abusing Jira a lot. This is not what Jira is for. This is what asset management is for if you want to use it as a database. Now, if you're using this one to actually create, for example, objects, I want to be able to create a new client or want to create a new contact, a new vendor, and so on. somewhere else, and then it's perfectly fine. Then it's a work item that you are tasking someone to actually create that. So that is what I would refer to as a service request that someone submits to Jira Service Management and say, can you please create a new vendor, for example, in somewhere? Or can you create a new employee in the AD, for example? That is perfectly legit request, and that is a work order that you're assigning to someone. So to say that this is not work, that doesn't make any sense. And you're also saying that these items have life cycles. No. When you're talking about life cycles here, now you're using Jira as an asset management. It's not for that at all. Jira should never be used as a database. You're completely out of line there. You should use assets for that one if you want to have life cycles for it. But you have statuses and workflows, and that is the progress of the work that you are doing for the work order that you have been assigned. So yes, that is absolutely work that is related to that. But to say none of them are a type of work, well, no, these are objects. This is data objects that you are asking someone to build or to create for you. Or you're using Jira incorrectly and you should stop using it that way. Or you can use it that way if you want, but it's not what the tool is built for, so it's kind of like using a sledgehammer to paint a wall. It's not going to be very optimal, but sure, you can do it. And Dave here is taking the opportunity here, sneaky way, to bring in that you can, I want to have new icons, have nothing to do with the change itself, but yes, I agree with you, it would be good to have a few other icons there, because there's not that many. You can, like Steven says here, that you can actually create your own, and some of you might know that I've created a bunch of these on my website that you can download for free. So if you want to have some of these and you don't know how to actually do it, then feel free to download them if you want. And then Jonathan has a lot of opinions here. He's quite upset, and he is presenting his frustration in a way that suggests that he doesn't really understand the change, or he does not really understand how Jira works. So he first then make this one, how can I use this generic term now to ask people to create generic work? Well, first of all, you shouldn't. You should specify what kind of work do you actually want people to create. So he says that, can you create work? Well, you don't say, can you create issue? That's not English. And can you create a work type? Can you create an issue type? Well, only an administrator can create an issue type. So that doesn't make any sense either. Can you create a work item? Well, can you create an issue item? Does not really make sense either. And nothing you have related to creating makes sense if you try to use the generic terminology. So what you do is you say, can you create an incident? Can you create a task? Can you create a story? Can you create a change? And so on. So you actually specify what kind of work item is it that you want them to actually submit. Because otherwise people will still ask you, yes, but what kind of ticket do you want me to create, or what kind of issue do you want me to create? So introducing now a word that is a little bit more difficult to use generically, which it should be, because issue in itself was a horrible word as well. That actually helps you force the users to talk properly, to actually address the situation they want to do, and to give them the solution to how they should create now a work order for you. So I would actually say that if you cannot use the specifics, if you can't use the issue type name or the work item name, or sorry, work type name, that will be named now in March, and ask them to, can you create a work item for me? Or a work order. That is basically what you want them to do. Now, Jonathan claims that none of these sound good in English. Well, if you reflect on what you're asking people here, can you create an issue? What are you asking me really? Should I go out and smash a window, or should I may introduce wrong code somewhere? Because creating an issue is a problem. That is something that it's something that needs to be addressed. And if that is not what you're asking them to do, break something or something that you need to react to because something is wrong, then you are very bad at communicating what you want them to do. So create an issue that is just makes sense because you're not reflecting on what you're actually asking people. But if you step back, if you go back 20 years and someone came up to you and say, can you create an issue? Then you will go like, what are you talking about? I want to have a service request to ask for a new access, or I have an incident I would like you to refer to, or I want to add a new requirement to a product. Why are you asking me to make a fuss and create an issue here? So no, I don't think that this one doesn't make any sense to me. This is more you resisting the change itself, which I understand. I'm going to slip up on this one 100 million times before I get the wording correct. So this one, not everything is work. Yes, it is. Everything that you have in Jira is work, or you have put it in the wrong place. Because if you're not putting in work in a work tool that is used for work management, where you put work that people that work actually work on, then what are you putting in there? Then you're either using the wrong tool, if you're using it like they did up here, and trying to actually, like David here, trying to put it in data as a database, as a reference database, then you're doing it the wrong way. Jira is not that. Or you are not really understanding what work means, and that's what actually brings me down here to David here. Because David is also a little bit confused on what work actually is. So he thinks that physical assets or report are not work. And also if you have duplicate issues, they are not work. And I'm sorry to tell you this, David, but if you have a physical asset, then what are you doing with the physical asset? You're either requesting a physical asset, or you want to report on a physical asset, or any other way that you want to communicate about a physical asset. And what you are doing is you're starting a communication, and someone actually have to look at that. And they are employed, and they are reviewing your communication as part of their work. So there is work involved. And you are probably asking them to do something, either solve a problem for you with the physical device, or you want them to assign a physical device, or you want them to configure a physical device. So all of those require work. And the same thing with reports. They don't happen automatically. So someone actually have to generate the data and give you a visual UI where you can actually see the report. And they need to probably configure a bunch of things to actually get that report done. That is work, 100%. And when you have duplicate issues, well, if two people submit the same request and they are, let's say it's an incident or it's a service request, they want to have the report, two of them having the same report. Yes, one of them will not be actioned upon. So no one will actually do any work on that one to actually configure the report, for example. But someone needs to receive that ticket. Someone needs to actually review what you have. Someone needs to find that you have a duplicate of that one. Someone needs to connect those two tickets, and someone needs to close one ticket. Someone needs to communicate with you. All of this is work. And what you have submitted is actually a work request for something to be done. Just because it's duplicate doesn't mean that it's not work-related, because if you take that one in isolation, it's still work that you want them to do. So no matter how you turn and twist, all of these are work-related. So David and Jonathan, you are both a little bit frustrated over that the naming is wrong, and also that certain things that you consider to not be work actually is work. And that is a little bit terrifying to me, that you consider things in Jira not being work. And that is weird from a work tool. And Andrea, she thinks that people will still going to use them and call them Jira tickets, and I fully agree. I think that name will stick. And then also, she feels that it sounds odd now then to refer to something as a work item. And for me, I cannot for the life of me understand why you would actually use that term. I'm pretty sure that if someone were to send in a ticket, they would not say I sent in a ticket because I would still have no clue what that was. Instead, they would say I sent in a service request, or I sent in an incident, and so on. And I know that a lot of people say this, I sent in a ticket, and which is completely is not helping anyone to actually figure out what did you actually ask for me. Because the different request types that you have, that is on top of the issue types, which is where you have the configuration for the workflows, they are what actually matters. So if you ask a support agent to help you with something that you submitted, and you have submitted, for example, I need access to a certain system, or if you have a request to say, can I buy a new domain name? They are probably handled by completely different people. So asking one person and saying I submitted a ticket doesn't really help you. And then when you refer to the ID here, that is the only thing that actually helped me to figure out if I can find it in Jira at all. So what you can do if you find it difficult now that you no longer can use the term ticket is stop using the term ticket or work item or any other, and just say I submitted a request, or I submitted a service request, a change, an incident, and so on, and it has this ID. Can you verify if that one has been actioned or not? And even better, just tell them, teach your users to don't, because this is the equality of sending an email, then phoning someone afterwards and ask, have you seen my email? Just make sure that you hold the communication where it belongs in your service management, and if someone asks, have you seen it? Then you have obviously failed to actually show what is happening in the ticket. If no one has picked it up, no one has been assigned, it hasn't changed status, and no one has picked it up, that should be obvious. So make sure that you build the solution properly, so people don't have to come with these stupid questions, because they should know if you have taken action or not. And I'm sorry, Andrea, we don't need more words. We don't need more made-up words. We need to be moving back towards saying what we actually do. Because one of the problems we are having is that all these buzzwords and all these nonsense words that we're adding now to our vocabulary is just confusing people more. We don't need more of that. What we need to do is to align it, making sure that we have a unified language. And you seem to think that this one is, you think that it makes sense that you stand out, that you're using different words. Well, if you want, you can just switch over to Cantonese if you want, and you will stand out within your organization for sure if you refer to whatever work is called in Cantonese. But it doesn't help your organization to actually become more efficient, to understand each other better, to work together better. Because having tools with their own language and their own vocabulary and their own taxonomy is actually making things less efficient within your organization. So no, it should not be a new term. It should not be a new word. It should be aligned, and every tool that is a work tool are aligning towards more having the natural language. Instead of having buzzwords and made-up terms, we try to align them against what do we actually do, because that's what we need. We need to have the natural language instead of having these made-up things that are connected to processes and frameworks and rituals that doesn't really make any sense. So I'm sorry, I do not agree with you there, Andrea. I think that this is the correct way. Yeah, Rick is also thinking that submit the Jira work just sounds dumb. Yes, it does. Don't say it. Say submit the ticket, say submit an incident or submit the service request. Or better yet, use the exact wording of the service request you want them to do. If you want to have someone that want to submit, for example, a new requirement, then tell them that. Then submit the new requirement. And you should have then the actually name for that one should be in the portal then, saying submit the requirement, or this is where you submit the requirement, or requirement submission, or wherever you want to have it. But saying that you submit the ticket or submit an issue, that's not helpful to anyone because no one knows what kind you want to have. Let's be honest, most Jira instances have a lot of weird ones, weird issue types and weird request types that no one really understands what it is. And a lot of people complain that they cannot find the correct one to actually submit what they want to submit. So don't make it more complicated for people by using a generic term. Let's see. We did not get to see any stats or participate in any polls. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Jonathan, but it was out, I don't know how long it was, 8 months, a year ago, something like that, when they first announced this. And they requested feedback from it. It has been in the development forum for the partners. It has been dozens of emails, communications all over the world. So I don't understand why you feel that you have not been consulted. And let's be honest, your voice means very little in the grand scheme of things, just like mine do. It doesn't mean anything because the feedback Atlassian requested was not like a democracy. It was not like if you had pulled your voice or if you had voted and said, oh, we want to be calling this one task, then it would have tipped over and Atlassian would have been forced to call it task. That's not how it works. Feedback is requested so we see what do people actually think. But at the end of the day, it is a business decision based on the roadmap and the vision they have for the products and also for where they see the value will come from in the future. So maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but maybe in 5 years. So I'm sorry, Jonathan, but this is you missed the communication that they have sent out, and it doesn't really matter if you had voted or not, because the feedback that they received a lot of feedback anyway, and many of them had the same feedback that you had, and Atlassian, like me, realized that you are complaining on the wrong things. And Rodolfo here, he wants to, it's not aligned with the spirit of transparency and community. I'm not really sure what you are referring to here because it has been out for review for a long time. They have made interviews, they have had polls, they had done a lot of things. It has been very transparent that this has been done. And the community has been involved. Just look at this post and the post that was referred earlier here that came out months ago. People have been very active. They have been communicating. Atlassian is very open and transparent with this change. And they have even asked which of the wordings, and they have given several options to see which one people prefer. So I'm sorry, Rodolfo, you probably just missed this. And this is not your fault, and it's difficult to keep track of. There's so many changes happen. And this one is also, the community has spoken. Yeah, we have. And you are not the only one who have opinion. And a lot of people have the opinion that this is the right choice. So it's not like everyone in the community agrees with your point of view, because I've been complaining about this one. I know hundreds of colleagues of mine and people in similar position have complained about this one for many, many years. Because it is confusing, it is causing a lot of problems within organizations, with trainings and all kinds of things. So I'm sorry, Rodolfo, you are in the wrong here. And they did not unilaterally decide anything because to avoid listening to you, they are an organization and a company that owns this product. This is a SaaS product. They decide always unilaterally. They will take our feedback, but at the end of the day, it's not a democracy, and your opinions have absolutely no bearing on their business decisions. And also this one, if you're going to solve a problem, solve it right. And this is an opinion. I disagree with your opinion. I think this is the right way to solve a very big problem that has existing for decades. So while I respect your opinion, you think this was the wrong one, I disagree with you. And at the end of the day, neither you or I have any say in this one. It is up to Atlassian to make the best decision for their company. And let's go back to Jonathan again, and he's saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it was broken. It has been broken for 2 decades or even more. So that's why they are fixing it. And I'm hoping they will fix more things, because there are plenty of things like this that is wrong from a taxonomy and from a vocabulary point of view. And that is causing confusion. And that people like me that are training and educating and even building things for a lot of companies, we are struggling with that one, because we can change this. And this is hard-coded into the platform. And since it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to refer to work as issues, people get upset and we get crap for it. And it also makes it more complicated to hold trainings where people are asking, why do you want me to create an issue? That doesn't make any sense. And this one is also ask admins for feedback. They have multiple times, dozens, maybe even hundreds of times they've asked admins for feedback, and we have provided it, just like you could if you wanted to. And yes, partners, absolutely. Partners have been involved. Many partners have been asked about this one, and this is, again, it's not something that dependent on what the partners want for, because it doesn't affect their products other than the language itself. And this is a SaaS product. Yes, things will change, and that's just the way it is. So, but several partners have been consulted about this one, or questions about this one. And if you have, this one I agree with, if you have DC and cloud, it will be a little bit messy for that organization. So, because you will refer to issues in one in data center, and will now be referring to work items in cloud. I agree with that one. It should have been that they pushed it to data center at the same time. But I can understand why they're not doing it. And this one also, they have a variety of practices when it comes to issue types, request types, assets, report, and stuff. That is irrelevant, because none of these changes that will come out will actually have any effect on your practices. And this will just be a language change. So if you have in your documentation that you want people to create an issue, then change that one and update the language for it to actually fit what you actually want them to do. And if you have instructions, which a practice is, then you should never refer to something in the generic term, only specific ones. So you should refer to the issue types or the request types that you have in Jira, not the language below. So it should not be the reference to the issue itself. So the only thing that you should need to do is, if you have any description of what an issue type is, you will change that to a work type. And if you have anything to a request type, that will remain the same. So nothing really changes in that way. And if you have reporting and request types and stuff like that, they're not affected at all. So I think you are missing or you're misunderstanding this change, because you seem to think that this will affect the higher levels of configuration, which it does not. And it's not relevant to ask HR and legal. I think you are completely wrong there. It doesn't really matter if you're referring to Atlassian, that they are referring to their HR and legal, or if you mean that HR and legal in general should not be consulted about work, because they are using the tool itself. And you are absolutely in need of consulting both of these when it comes to, especially legal then, when it comes to how do we proceed with our roadmap for our platform. So, no, sorry, Jonathan, I don't agree with that one at all. Everyone is still working in the tool, and everyone within an organization needs to be consulted when you make changes like this. And Don doesn't want this in DC. And then Josh is doing a great job here then to answer a lot of questions here. So I won't go through that one. But Josh, if you're watching this one, you're doing a great job here. You were put in a difficult position. A lot of people were complaining on things that actually was not related to the change at all. But you did a great job answering the questions here, so good job. And then Jonathan is back again, and as you can tell, he's quite mad, and he says that the solution that Atlassian is doing, which is not a solution actually, it is a change that they are making from a poor wording that they have used for decades into a more appropriate wording. So it's not a solution that they have created, it's a change, and one that is designed then to align work or align the vocabulary with what you're actually doing. But he thinks it's not broad, it's too narrow, which is kind of weird when you are arguing that the term issue is a broad one when it can only be actually applied to incidents or problems, while the term work can be applied to everything that you are doing within a work tool. So I don't know how this argument or how this logic actually worked. But he's also referring to things that are not representing work and doesn't exist. You are completely wrong here, Jonathan. Sorry. But again, there's nothing in a work tool that is not related to work. Then you're using it as an email, or you're using it as a database or something like that. And that is not what Jira is for. So you're either abusing the tool or you are not understanding what the tool is doing. And David here is doing a lot, and he is he's talking kind of like my experience here, that once you have started getting to the tool and when you're new here, then they also notice the problem that you are having here. So I'm not going to go through this. This is a good post by David. And Brent here is also following up, and that this is always potential negative connotation. Yes, I agree with that one. And Oliver here is asking if this will affect JQLs, and no, it will not. Like Josh here was already stating in the article here, they will have backwards compatibility for quite a while, so this one should still work. And Mike is also adding here that is positive to this change. And then Stefan here, he's making a suggestion, and I think Stefan is the kind of person that is he's very oriented of solving problems, and I think this is great. And he thinks that instead of defining a new term, we should be able to change it and maybe have it a little bit whatever we want. And from a problem-solving perspective, from the user side, that makes sense, but technically it doesn't make any sense. And because, like I already said, there's a lot of technicality involved in this one. And let's see. And he is referring then to this one, that we have the distinction on the level above, where we actually have the issue types themselves. Anything that will then validate and say that let's extend this functionality rather than breaking interfaces. And it doesn't really break any interfaces, or it doesn't break any interfaces. It will just be a language change, which will confuse a lot of users, obviously, but it doesn't break anything. There's nothing that will actually happen in that regard. But he thinks that he's a little bit... you can see both the positive and negative, so he's not really saying that it's bad, but I think it's also helpful if we can bridge this change by having this one a little bit more dynamic. But like I said, this will cause all kinds of other problems. For example, if you have multiple instances, then it will be confusion about language. And then Jens here is coming in and say, why not use a term like ticket? And that makes sense when you have a tool that is referred to as ticket management. It does not really make any sense to have tickets when you're in a work management tool like Jira is. And the reason for that one is that the reference tickets means basically a communication, and you have a receipt. So that's why it's referred to as a ticket management tool, is that you are now sending in something and you get the ticket back with the ID, so you can actually follow your communication. And that's not what you do in Jira. And Jira, you actually don't have communication in that way. What you're doing is you're creating work orders on what should we actually do or what needs to be done. And we have a workflow that actually tells us how far have we progressed in this one, what kind of activities has happened, and how far are we off from ending this activity. So ticket in itself is also more of a visual representation. So rather than having like a card, for example, that doesn't really tell what kind of work do you do in a ticket. Well, a ticket is a generic like item and doesn't really tell anything. So a common term that is used and that is understood by technical and non-technical audiences, no, it is not. If you ask 100 people what a ticket is, you will get 100 answers, because a ticket is not actually defined in any way, and everyone have different opinions on what it is. Work, on the other hand, is very clear, and it's something that you need to do, that you are getting paid to do, and it's part of your work. That is what work is. So that is why ticket is not a good word to be using for Jira, but it is the term that you probably should use, or that I think that they will use for Jira Service Management eventually. And Jens also want to have a little bit information here about the data, and like I said, the decision here is not based on data on what the customers think. It is more like what kind of feedback do we have and what kind of risk is coming from that feedback. But at the end of the day, it's a business decision from Atlassian based on where they see their tool want to go. And you can be damn sure that they have made their analysis on what does this mean from a financial cost, what kind of risk do we have for the future, and also what kind of benefit do we see that we get from this one. So whatever votes were added there is completely irrelevant. It doesn't show anything other than a small sample size of what some customers think. Asking for data on what people thought doesn't really make any sense, and they will probably put it up somewhere eventually for transparency, but it is not something that you need to have for this. It's too late to go back anyway. It's not going to be possible to use that as like a sword to say that you have to go back because 36% wanted to have tasks, so we have to have that. That's not how it works. And Denise here, she is, I don't know if she has ever worked with SaaS products before, because if she says, if Atlassian is going to take a unilateral change to an important word or function, we ask that you provide paying clients the option to change the word. That's not how SaaS products work. You are renting a solution that is being built without your interference, or you cannot provide any input on what they will actually build there. They will build what they think is the best product that they want to sell, and if you don't like what they are actually building for you, your options is to leave. That's it. And also, if you want to have the option to change the word, that will then mean that you will have, you're asking Atlassian to complicate the product, to basically make it impossible for most people to actually follow any form of instructions or documentation from the Atlassian side, because they will refer to it as work, and you might have issue or task or whatever you have in your system, which means that your users cannot go to the Atlassian website and make any sense of what they can read there. And if you have it internally, and then it will again be very complicated to one group will be working in instance 1, another in instance 2, and you have the different wording there, and that's going to drive the poor administrators mad or crazy when they are trying to jump their brains between those two terminologies. So it's not a good solution, and it's an unreasonable solution. It's something that you have never had before. You have always been forced to use one terminology before. And the same thing can give us a choice. Again, you have it. Let's say you have 28 languages in your platform. You want to use one or the two. Then you need to have 28 language files updated. Atlassian needs to update all their documentation with multiple variants. It's not a reasonable request. It's not going to work that way. And if you have a situation where the term work is unfamiliar to your users, I'm sorry, but I don't know what you are doing then. If you're not working on things in Jira, that sounds weird to me. I'm assuming that people are unfamiliar with using that term today, not that they are unfamiliar with the term work. And yes, that is a change that you need to address, and it's going to be a little bit difficult if you have cranky organizations that don't like change. Then they will probably object to it, but at the end of the day, there's nothing they can do about it, nothing you can do about it. The change is here, and it's going to affect you. So you just have to deal with it. Showing paying customers Atlassian is flexible, allows for better environment of trust with the software. Atlassian has never been flexible. Has never been flexible. You might think that they are because they listen to you from time to time, but you do not have a lot of flexibility based on what you want. They are building a tool that they see that they want to have, and they are adding the configurations that they see make sense from a business perspective. And it doesn't allow for a better environment of trust within the software if you are adding configuration options that will confuse the living crap out of people. Because that's what's going to happen if you have flexibility of terminology. That's why they never have it, because it doesn't make any sense. If you are referring to an object as different things, then you're going to have the same situation that you had for epics for many years, where you couldn't change it, where you had the language is actually different, or the definition of epic is different depending on where in the organization you are. So it will be the opposite here, in saying that now you can have any wording that you want. So in organization A, we refer to this one as a feature, and the other one is an epic, and in the third one it will be a fnurgle, and in the third one is a tennis ball. And then you have 5 people in the room talking about how to build the next functionality for a product, and everyone is referring to this differently. It's not going to be a good solution for the end users. And for Atlassian as an organization, dealing with this confusion in terminology by allowing this flexibility is not. It's going to add a ton of support tickets, a lot of frustration, and bad will, and trust will actually go down. So I'm sorry, Denise. I understand that from your perspective, this is a bad change because you don't want it, but from the from a company perspective at Atlassian, it's a change that they must make, and it's also a change that they are willing to take the discomfort and the frustration from their customers because they see a gain for it long term. So if you feel that you lose trust because they are making changes you don't like, I don't think you will enjoy having a SaaS product as your work tool, because this will happen all the time. Annabelle is asking about the API again, and no, it will not affect in any way. And Jeremy here, he is building on top of the same confusion that we had from a few others here, is that he thinks that that certain things like, let's see, he needs to train a bunch of non-technical users at ticket or record or application, which he are used to broadly refer to as issue, that those now mean work. And yes, and if you have taught them differently in the past, then you have lied to them, because if the ticket is not work, then no one is getting paid to do it, right? No one is actually actioning on those. And if you have a record, that is actually a database term. So if someone is submitting a record of some sort, then you are abusing the system. And if you are referring to assets, then those terms will not change. So it will not change the terms. A record in assets or an object will not change. An application, that is also not something that you have in Jira. So this will then be something of an issue type. And you can see that here now when he is referring to these. We have a variety of projects where, depending on what we're doing, we call them these. Yes, and this has nothing to do with this change. And because what they are changing is the wording, the taxonomy that is underlying this one. So they will refer to these. This is now a work order. In this case will then be a work type. So the work type will be work order. And you will have a work type of application, and you'll have a work type of permit, which makes sense. Because a work order in itself is a stupid name, I think, because by definition it is a work order. So it's basically a task that you're having, or if you have any form of pre-description of it, it will probably be a story for it. But application means that you probably have a service request, which will then be the work type, and you will also have a request type on top of that one. So it looks like Jeremy is struggling a little bit with the structure and understanding the hierarchy between having the taxonomy, having the issue types, to having the request types on top of that one. And Anne is not happy either. She thinks this is the dumbest thing I'm aware that Atlassian has spent money on. I think not. I can name many other things that I think are completely stupid. Like having spent time on and money on implementing a timer when you have a stand-up, for example. That's probably the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But she thinks they are items. And I would like to ask then, define an item. Can you write down the description and the attributes that an item has? Because items are generic terms that doesn't mean anything. It's kind of like the term epic. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a big container of nothing. And it is only defined by what you put into them. And items is only defined by the context. So if you have a database item, that's very different from when you have a grocery item. So item is a strange word to have, and it is not representative of what you actually do. You don't do items, you do work. So I do not agree with you there. And even if I understand your frustration and that you want to refer to them like this. And the impact on existing filters and automations are none. So you will have plenty of time to update your filters and your automations and things like that before they will remove then the current JQL and API fields or the API attributes. So for now, nothing will happen. Now I could go on and on for this one. We have a page 2 here. So they are basically more of the same. And if we look at it, what is it that people are actually upset about? It seems to be less about the change itself and more of a misunderstanding of the change itself. And also more of an opinion on habit. So they are more used to actually saying the term issue. They're not reflecting really how bad it is, because they haven't worked, like me, for example, with the outfall of actually calling things the wrong thing. So I think once this rolls out, we will have a lot of organizations that will complain because they are used to having things in a certain way. They are used to having a conversation using the wrong terms, according to me. Where they are referring to generic terms instead of specific ones, and that is almost always because they do not have any training or they don't have an understanding of how the tool works. Because once you understand how the tool works, then you understand that you don't refer to a ticket, for example, or you don't refer to something as create an issue for it. It's like, why would you even say that one when you have defined specific issue types or work types and that you should be referring to help them? No one understands what you mean if you're saying create an issue for it, unless they have done it before and they have learned which of the issues you want them to actually create. So this one will be for everyone that have that own platforms now. Everyone that is working with training and education and managing people's way of working, this will be a challenge. So you need to get on top of this one. And it's sad that people come in and actually react to this one now, because this is something you should have been reacting to like 3, 4, 5 months ago, and just told people these are changes that are coming. They are renaming the types issue and tickets. We do not have the exact name yet, but we need to be prepared for it. And because you are not the only ones that probably have done documentation, so every organization have multiple groups that do their own instructions for how to do different things. And all of them need to be informed then that we are now going to change this one. So you need to update your instructions and your guides and making sure that you're using the new terms. And then have a few meetings probably where people want to complain. You can tell them that you are just as angry as they are and help them then get over this. So this was a long video, and a lot of people are, like I said, a little bit upset, but I think there's a lot of screaming into a can here, and there's not a lot of substance, or not a lot of problems that they actually are lifting up. What they are exposing is more that they do not really have a good grasp of the products of Jira and Jira Service Management and Jira Product Discovery, especially when it comes to the configuration and the hierarchy of information in the configurations. So when this one rolls out, everyone who's screaming now will probably not be as upset once they see it for real. And those who are, they have probably problems outside of the Atlassian platforms or the Atlassian platform, rather than this is their main concern, because language is a problem. We know that for most organizations in the world, to have a unified language, and a lot of people are using the misguided or the wrong terms like issues that does not represent what they actually do. And this is now, I don't know if it is by design or by accident, by Atlassian making this change, they will actually push a lot of this bad communication out of many organizations, because like some of them have said, it's difficult to say, can you create a work item? It feels weird, at least today, but maybe in 3 or 5 years it will be very natural, just like, can you create an issue, even though it makes absolutely no sense in other context. So I think this is a temporary thing that people are upset about and that they are struggling with, because it's a change. And it's also a change that for some reason they haven't observed, that they haven't been paying attention to. And that in itself is another problem that a lot of people that work within the Atlassian community and Atlassian products experience, that communications is frequent and it's a lot of communication that goes out, but not a lot of users actually read those. And it seems that some that are also involved in the product themselves, either as administrators or as vendors or partners, they are also not paying attention to these things. And that's a little bit weird, because that's their job to actually stay on top of that. But overall, I think this is a storm in a water glass. It will pass. It will roll out in March. People will nag and complain all through the summer, and then after the summer, this one will be gone. People will have just accepted that this is the new reality, and they realize they are working within a SaaS. It's a work tool. Maybe it makes a little bit sense anyway once you're getting used to it. But that was all I had. I think it's. I needed to make this video because I think it's a little bit interesting to have people being so upset by correcting language that actually makes sense instead of using language that doesn't. And the psychology behind this one, and also the problem we as human beings have with change. It's kind of interesting, and it's also something that it's important to take into consideration. I think that Atlassian have taken this into consideration quite well, and I think they have communicated well, but it's still something that maybe we as Atlassian administrators or Atlassian users need to consider also when we make changes, big changes. But that was it I had for today. It was a long ramble today, and I guess the only thing that remains is for me to say then that I hope that you have a great day and awesome week.